Today I'm going to be preaching from this subject, the search for certainty. The search for certainty. Let's pray together. Jesus, thank you for being with us already in this service. Thank you for the time of worship. Thank you for this atmosphere that we are able to experience together. I ask you, God, to help us to be in tune with you and your word. I ask you, God, to help our hearts to be ready to receive what you have for us in this service. For those that are here and those that are online, in Jesus' precious name we pray, and everybody said amen. So, anybody here from a big city? You lived in a big city at some point? Big city. I'm talking about one of them big cities. You got a few of those folks here. I know we got a lot of New Yorkers here. I visit big cities from time to time, and one of the things that stands out from these big cities that we lived in, or that we visited, were you'd go down these sidewalks and you need to get across the street, and it was extremely busy. All the stuff that's going on, all these cars, thousands of cars going by, and you need to get across there, and you got 500 people sitting there waiting to get across with you, and you have to find one of these things right here. And push the button to cross the street. And you go up to it and you go to push this button and you're saying, if I don't get some way to get across here, I could be waiting forever, and I'm sure not crossing while the cars are coming. So you go up and you push the button and you wait for something to happen. And nothing's really happening. And then you see somebody else push the button and nothing's happening. You say, well, maybe they didn't push it right. So you go over and hit it a few more times, and then maybe you just, play a little pattern on it. You're trying your best to figure out how to get across that street. And then to come to find out, I've got some bad news for you folks. During busy times of the day, these big cities, they disable the button. And we're over there, we're pushing it, we're thinking, man, we're going to do something to help me get across this street. But in reality, it's there to help us feel like we have some power over a situation that we have absolutely zero control of. No matter how many times you push that button, no matter how fast you push the button, you are not crossing across that street before the timers on those traffic lights say you are. How about this? You're in a hotel, and you're there with your family, and you got this big old cart that you got your luggage on, and then you're making your way into the elevator there, and you squeeze on the elevator, and you got your family in there, and then you're saying, if these doors won't just hurry up and shut, please. Because you hear somebody coming down the hallway, and they're loud, and they're talking on their phone, and they've got all their luggage, and all you can think is, I would just love to have this little bit of space that I have to myself. And sure enough, here they come, and then you go and you find one of these, the door close button. And you go, and you're up next to it, and you're just pushing it. I know somebody here has done this before. I know I've done it. I go up and push that button like, oh, dear Lord, please hurry up and shut these doors. And then sure enough, they don't shut in time, and somebody comes and they've got their luggage, and they see that the elevator's completely full, but they're just, they don't want to wait 13 seconds for the next elevator. Here they come. You guys got any room? You're like, sure, come on in. We were holding the door for you. Make yourself at home in our little elevator. Oh, man, I got some more bad news for you. Well, those elevator buttons have been disabled in most elevators by elevator companies to make sure that you aren't the one that's controlling it. They are. They want as many people on that elevator to make as few trips as possible. So you could push that button as many times as you want, as hard as you want, and it's there to help you feel like you have some sort of influence over an outcome that is entirely outside of your control. A lot of what happens in our lives is really outside of our direct control. Now, we like to think that we're in the driver's seat. But in reality, our ability to steer some of life's biggest issues are very limited. We're a lot like kids in one of these. These things are the bane of every parent's existence for parents of children from the ages of 2 to 3 years old. It's not optimal for shopping in any way, shape, or form. But if a 2-year-old was to choose between a regular shopping cart and one of these, they're going to choose one of these every single time. Besides getting to pretend like they're at the Daytona 500 instead of the produce section of the grocery store. Kids love these things for one main reason, and that is because it has a steering wheel. Now, if that steering wheel were actually functional, I want you to imagine the carnage that would be in that grocery store if that were to happen. I mean, I was having fun picturing these kids actually steering these carts, and there's oncoming cart, boom, crash. Extra virgin olive oil section, boom. Worcestershire sauce, squip, boom. A 2-story tall display of Mountain Dew, bow. This would be disaster. And that's what I imagine happening if they had control, but in reality, they're not in control of anything. The person behind them is. Somebody has the power, but not them. But that's funny when we're talking about a kid in a shopping cart, but it's not so funny when it's you and when it's life that puts you in these type of conditions, these types of situations. And no matter how hard you try to turn the wheel in a different direction, you can't seem to change what's going on. Just think back to some situations in your life when things were happening around you that were completely out of your control. And try to remember how it felt. Some of you don't have to try to remember because you're in those situations right now. It's either you or someone close to you is going through something that you can't seem to change no matter how hard you try and no matter what you do. It's not a fun place to be. Most of us, we spend our entire lives in pursuit of 4 things: control, clarity, security, and certainty. The more of these 4 things that we have in any given season in our lives, the better off we're doing emotionally and spiritually. And as long as we feel like we're in an got airtight guarantees in these type of areas of our lives, then we're going to have better health, and we're going to have better finances and better families, and our career and our future, they're going to be doing just fine. I talked to someone recently. They said, my marriage has never been in a better place. Oh man, everything's wonderful. The romance is alive and well, doing so good. Something I know about the situation is that their finances are doing really well right now. They're doing good, and there's money in the bank. And I looked at them and I said, isn't it funny how love is in the air when money's in the bank? I just love you so much right now, mainly because the checks aren't bouncing, but I really love you. When we have guarantees, when we have certainty, when we feel secure, other areas of our lives benefit. The question is, what happens when the bank account starts to run low? Does the marriage suffer then? Most of us place a premium value on certainty. The things we feel like we are in control over. Here's what we need to know today. At some point in your life, that certainty is going to be upended. At some point in your life, you're going to find out that some of the things that you thought you were in complete control over are nowhere near as predictable, nowhere near as manageable or certain as you thought they were. One thing is for certain: we will all deal with uncertainty. What makes faith fall apart isn't doubt, it's being certain of the wrong things. Somebody needs to be taking notes here this morning because it's going to help you. We've been told by our culture that life is supposed to work a lot like this. We're going to move from on this linear line from uncertainty to more certainty, from less clarity to more clarity, from unpredictable to more predictable and more controllable. We have this plan for almost everything we do in our lives that is built on this premise that things are supposed to happen in a certain way. That's the way we start our lives. That's the way we live our lives. Things are supposed to go from here to there. That's the way it's supposed to be. It's going to be this neat and orderly and predictable pattern. We bring that kind of thinking into a lot of areas of our lives. If we have kids, we just mostly assume that things are going to happen in a certain way. They're going to be born. Then they're going to be hopefully self-sufficient and feeding themselves and sleeping through the night at some point. Can I get parents to say amen? Then they're going to make their way on to pre-K, and then they're going to go to elementary school. Then they're going to get the honor roll, and then they're going to be in the gifted program by the time they're in the first grade. And then they're going to go on to middle school. They're going to have a 4.0 GPA, and then they're going to go on to high school and get scholarships and more success and stability and predictability. In our minds, it's an easy, linear, clear path where everything is up and to the right. But the parents in the room that know the reality sets in at some point, and it's quite a different picture. It's usually a lot more like what happened to my parents. A little bit, yeah. You guys are already starting to laugh. Stop that. It was my first day of kindergarten. Oh, man. Let's see if my mom already knows where this is going. She doesn't yet. This is good. First day of kindergarten, my parents are dropping me off for school, and they're really proud of me already, and they're telling me, you're going to be someone special. It's going to be great. God's got his hand on your life. You go, this is the beginning of the rest of your life. I'm so proud of you, son, and they're really excited about my first day of school. Little do they know that they would be receiving a phone call from my teacher later that evening. Mr. and Mrs. Forbush, I got something I'd like to tell you. Jason thought it was a good idea to have a pretend sword fight with his scissors on the first day of school. Yo, I was a ninja from day one. Can you please make sure that doesn't happen again? Thank you. They were so proud. Now, they did say there was a purpose for my life. Let me tell you what I think. I think there's a divine purpose on my life for this earth. God has called me for a reason, and I think that main reason was to prepare my pastoring parents for you guys. If they know how to have patience, it's because I taught them. If they know how to pray, it's because I taught them how to pray. You are welcome. I got a divine purpose. It took me a long time to figure out what that purpose was. I figured it out. So life isn't so linear. It's actually a lot more like this. Instead of this yellow line going right through, it's these ups and it's these downs, and there's these new stages and new phases, and we're going to be up for a while, then we're going to be back down again, and then we're going to be up again. And there's some things that don't turn out at all the way you imagined or planned them. Am I talking to somebody today? It's not at all like I designed it. This isn't what I planned for. What in the world is life throwing at me here? It doesn't end there. We assume that after that there's going to be college. Then they'll end up getting themselves a job, hopefully, and they'll move out on their own, hopefully. And then there comes marriage and kids, and again, in their minds, it's a clear, easy, predictable process and procession. But actually, it looks a lot more like this. It's this nonsense of life, this mess that we called life continues to throw these curveballs at us, and sometimes it's up and sometimes it's down, and we imagined it like this, but in reality it's like this. In the medical field, a flat line is not a good thing. There's those ups and down arrows, those times it goes up and down. That's a sign of life. And some of our surprise at uncertainties of life is because sometimes we take our cues from our culture more than from the Bible. And a lot of times our preconceived ideas about how things are supposed to turn out are because they're more reminiscent of Hallmark movies than they are of reality. They're more about fantasy than they are the reality of life. Jesus said, in the world you will have tribulation. That word tribulation comes from another Greek word that means pressure. That's the ups and downs. Jesus knew in advance, he says, this world is going to give you pressure. It's going to do things to you that you had no idea was coming, and all this predictability that you're hope for will not be there. And he's trying to prepare us for this. We are promised pressure. We pray against pressure. But Jesus is saying, I tried to tell you that you might not pray against all pressure because I designed life to give you pressure. We were told in many ways life was going to refuse to follow our pre-existing notions of what we think it should be. And no matter how hard we try, we can't avoid every bit of uncertainty. We can't protect ourselves from every unforeseen difficulty, and we can't fix every problem that comes along. Some of us in this room today, you are exhausted. I slowed down here on purpose because I want you to receive this. You are exhausted. And if I had people to raise their hands in the room, you'd say, this is me 10 times over. You're mentally and physically and emotionally tired. And it's directly due to the fact that you are spending a lot of your time and energy to control something that is outside of your control. You're violently turning the wheel saying, why can't I control this cart of life? What's wrong with my situation? What's wrong with the fact that I can't seem to get a grip on these things? Asking ourselves, why am I so tired? Sometimes I get way too emotional watching a football game. Some of y'all fans in the room know what I'm talking about. No, quarterback, stay in the pocket. If you get outside of the pocket, you're going to get hurt. You're going to cost us the playoffs and then the Super Bowl. Not that we were going to the Super Bowl anyways. But I get so stressed out, and yet I have zero control over this game. I mean, I'm even praying over it and nothing's happening. I'm like, God, just in case there's a chance, I'm going to tell on myself here, just in case there's a chance someone's not praying for the other team, I want to be praying for my team. You know what I'm saying? Just in case somebody's praying for the other team, I don't want it to cancel out my prayers. So I'm just going to throw my prayers out there and see if anything happens. It does not work. It does not work. This might have even become a way of life where we spend ourselves trying to control something that we can't. We spend our every waking moment trying to get out in front of the next disaster. We try to anticipate what could go wrong next. I'm talking to somebody here. I'm trying to anticipate what could be wrong next. What's about to happen? Trying to solve the next problem before it even happens. It leaves you anxious and worn out. People have always had problems with uncertainty, and this is not a new thing. We've always found ways to put as much security and predictability into our lives as possible. We've always been uncomfortable with the idea of good things can happen, bad things can happen to good people. We tried to find out ways to make sense of tragedy. How in the world can I be doing good things and bad stuff happen to me? How in the world could I try to live a good life and still bad stuff is happening to me? And we try to make sense of it. We try to reason these things out. People have always had problems with uncertainty. And when others are suffering, sure, we want to comfort them, but we want to find some assurance that things like that aren't going to happen to us. We find ways to make sense of tragedies and trials, and the idea of things like health and wealth and even life itself are very fragile and extremely vulnerable, and it's not a reassuring thought. So even in ancient times, we created this way of seeing the world that seems certain and predictable. So it was a common practice and a common belief in Bible times that when someone was suffering, it was because they were doing something wrong. And when someone had something bad happen to them, it was their fault. So if you had something that happened to you that you didn't deserve to have happen to you, like that. If not, that kind of thing can happen to anybody at any time. For any reason in the world, suddenly we become less secure and less certain. If all of a sudden something bad could happen to you, and I can't put a label on it as to why it's happening to you, then whatever happened to you can happen to me. I'm talking to you. I hope you receive it. You could see this idea had happened in Job. Oh, Job, he lost his wealth, he lost his health, he lost his family. And then his friends came over, his friends. His friends come over and they're going to comfort him. Oh, man, they got something. They're going to really help him out here. And they're like, here, let me help you. You know what? You want to know how to stop whatever's going on in your life, all this bad stuff that's going on in your life? Let me help you stop it. Job, stop sinning. Job, if you want something good to happen to you, stop doing all the bad stuff that you're doing in secret. Get your heart right, then it'll stop. It was a great way of shielding themselves from the reality that bad things could happen to them as well. It was a great way of trying to bring some certainty into a situation that didn't make any sense. It was a great way to attach an explanation to Job's suffering that would protect their own notion of how the world works. This couldn't happen to me because I haven't done what they've done. This couldn't happen. What's happening to that person across the room? What happened to that individual? What's going on over there? Thank God that can't happen to me because I'm certainly not doing what they're doing. There was, of course, one problem with all of this. They were completely wrong. Job wasn't suffering because he had done something wrong. He was suffering because he'd done a lot of things right. And God trusted him with a trial to prove something to the adversary. God wanted to show the enemy, yes, Satan people can still worship me, even though they're going through a storm, and they don't even know why, and they don't even know when it's going to end. And my true believers worship me not because of what I do for them. It's because of who I am. They trust me even when they don't know or have a clue what is going on in their life and what I'm doing or why. Job's friends wanted to feel safe. They wanted to feel like the whirlwind that they were experiencing was, that they were going through, that he was going through, that they were going to be protected from that. So they created a reason that erased their uncertainties. I'm uncertain as to exactly what is going on in Job's life, so I will create one. Job, it's your fault. This can't happen to us. It's happening. He's messed up, so he's paying the price. We need to be very careful when we're assigning reasons as to why people are going through a storm. That kind of certainty often leads to judgmentalism. Do you know that people still do that today? When a storm hits in somebody else's life, a lot of people, their first reaction is to reason away why it's happening to that individual and why there's no way that could ever happen to them. Well, of course, so-and-so is struggling financially. That career field isn't secure. It's no wonder that they got laid off. They probably haven't been careful with their savings the way that I have. Well, of course, so-and-so's child is struggling. Of course they are. It's just another case of bad parenting. If they had done things differently the way that I did, maybe their child would be in a better spot. Well, of course, so-and-so is dealing with that health problem or health condition. If they'd have just taken better care of themselves the way that they should have, they wouldn't be dealing with what they're dealing with now. I was in a health crisis of my own some season back in my life, and I was in and out of the hospital. One of the tougher times of my life, to be honest with you, and I actually, quite literally, the toughest time of my life. And I looked at it and I said, God, I need some encouragement. I need some strength there. I need something. And I had some people call me, and they were encouraging to me, and I really appreciated that. And someone contacted me, and they said, how's it going? How are things? And I let them know that it wasn't going too well, but God's going to bring me through it. And they were very, very serious when they said this comment. They said, well, I guess this will teach you to eat more vegetables. And I said to myself, man, that's rough right now. They happen to know that I'm not a big vegetable eater. I eat vegetables. I don't eat a ton of them. I take a lot of supplements that offset any of that stuff. It's just not my thing. But in that moment, they had a reason. Here's the reality. They were a vegetable eater. They like eating their vegetables. But because they ate their vegetables, whatever was happened to me will never happen to them. And it couldn't be that God was teaching me something in a storm. It couldn't be that there was a circumstance that God allowed to happen to me to help teach me my faith. No, it had to be that they had a reason for it. And that reason was something they would never deal with because they happened to be a good vegetable eater. So, not everything bad that happens to us is payback from God. Not everything that happens in your life, God's designed some plan to just give you some sort of retribution for it. So when our hunger for certainty overtakes our hunger for truth, we're in trouble. Anything that's given too much priority and too much power can become an idol, including our desire for certainty. When we start allowing certainty or the lack thereof to determine what we do and don't do, we're in a scary place. There's a lot of variables in life. There's a lot of ups and downs. There's a lot of stuff that you'll never be able to factor in what's going to happen next. And some of us try to figure all that stuff, and we try to live by the odds. Let me tell you this, according to some stats that I've found, that you have a 1 in 4,292 chance of being hit by a car in your lifetime. That's actually not that bad of odds. Too bad the lottery isn't that good of odds. Nobody in this room can be absolutely certain that it won't happen to you. To make things worse, when you walk out of this building today, that there's a lot of traffic around you, and there's a chance that it could happen at any day. Well, that's pretty depressing, Pastor Jason. It could be. It could be depressing. The problem is you can't just stay here because there's a chance that something bad could happen to you because there's one in 4,000 chance that you're going to get hit by a car. So therefore, I've decided I will no longer go anywhere near cars because there's a chance. For those that are afraid of the beach, you are 20 times more likely to be killed by a cow than you are a shark. It's the truth. I saw it. I read it. Credible sources. Yeah, I know. It's crazy. Every year there's an average of 1 shark death, okay? 1 shark death. Every year there are 20 cow-related deaths where people, I guess stampedes are more serious than you think they are. You have a 1 in 15,000 chance of being struck by lightning in your lifetime. So because of that, you cannot be certain it won't happen to you. So should we stay inside for the rest of our lives? Should we not go outside? Should we be scared to death that we're going to be that 1 in 15,000 struck by lightning? Now, here, let me do this. Here's in your notes. A life lived in a search of certainty is a life governed by fear. The answer to uncertainty isn't obsessing over the odds, obsessing over the fact that it could happen. I hear it, especially in these later days. We're hearing it like crazy. There's this % chance of this %. I understand that we need to be conscious and we need to be aware of our surroundings, but we can't always live by the odds because if we did, we wouldn't do anything. The answer to uncertainty isn't obsessing over the odds or continually thinking about and planning for every possible something that could go wrong and try to get ahead of it, or making risk avoidance your life's goal. All 3 of these methods are dealing with uncertainty. Ultimately, they will lead to anxiety. Yeah, somebody says, well, you can never be too safe. Absolutely, you can be too safe. There's something about life that what if Peter was saying, you never can be too safe. I'm not stepping out of this boat. There's some things that we need to do in life that are steps of faith. We can be too safe. Don't put words in my mouth. I think we need to be safe, and I think we need to take precautions and all that stuff. Let me put it this way. If you drink poison, you're going to get sick. Okay? If you play in the street all the time, you're probably going to up your odds of getting hit by a car. We need to be smart about the stuff we do, okay? So I'm not saying that there's not repercussions for bad decisions. You constantly make bad decisions, you're going to reap some bad stuff. I'm talking about just going through life, doing your best to do life right. Sometimes bad things happen, but God still got you in the process. Author John Kavanaugh said what he called was the chance of a lifetime that he got many years ago. He was given the opportunity to spend some time with Mother Teresa as she worked with the poor in Calcutta, India. He watched as she helped people that were hungry, hopeless, and homeless, and many times they were dying. He thought about the many years that she had spent selflessly serving others and the thousands of orphans and sick people that she had cared for. And she seemed to have such a certainty about her purpose in life. And she seemed to be so secure about what she was doing and why. And before he left, he asked her, he says, will you pray for me? He says, please pray that I'll have clarity, he said. I want to be certain about the will of God for my life like you are. She responded by saying, I have never had clarity. What I have always had is trust. So I will pray that you trust God. Trust is so much better than clarity. It's so much better than certainty. Trust will cause you to become more. It will cause you to do more. It will cause you to risk more. It will cause you to reach more. While the quest for certainty will always leave us with less faith, less experiences, less joy, less peace. God will never ask us to avoid uncertainty. He calls us to embrace it and trust Him in it. He's not saying you shouldn't be uncertain at times. He designed us that way. He doesn't want us to be completely certain. If we were certain, why would we need Him? Why would we ever need God if we knew exactly what was going to happen from one day to the next? It's entirely possible to be fooled into serving certainty when you meant to serve God. We sometimes use God just to help make sure we have certainty. God, where are you at? Please make sure today is completely certain in every way, shape, or form. That's not necessarily just faith. That's saying, God, I'm going to use you as a tool to help me make sure that everything I look at is prepared ahead of me, instead of me saying, God, I don't know where the bread's going to come from, but I know that eventually it's going to make it here. It's possible that your faith is gradually moved over time, and instead of resting on God alone, it's actually resting on certain outcomes. There's a question that we can ask ourselves when we tell us whether or not we're headed down this road of serving certainty instead of serving God. I want to ask you this question. I'd love for you to give it some thought right now. Is there anything in your life that would cause your faith to come crashing down if it was suddenly shifted or it disappeared? If there's anything in your life that if it moved, your faith would crash, what is it that your ladder of faith and your ladder of trust is leaned against? If you never got that promotion that you feel like you deserve, if you didn't get into that college or that perfect, career field, if your home you've invested a lot in was taken away from you for some reason, if the finances that you've worked so hard to accumulate were suddenly gone, if you went to the doctor's appointment tomorrow and some bad news came about your health, if something happened in your marriage, if something happened to your children, if the future doesn't turn out exactly the way you planned it, would your faith come crashing down? Oh, I think most of us would love to say never, no way, no how. Been doing this long enough to watch people's faith come crashing down on a regular basis because one of these things happened. Oh, never, God, I'd never let that happen. I'd never let that happen at all. Then something happened to their health. And God, have you forgotten about me? And then all of a sudden we have no belief that He's even around anymore because our faith was in the certainty of our health. Here's the truth. I'd love to be able to promise everybody, every one of you here today, that your lives will be pain-free, that there'll be no surprises in your future that will hurt you, that your life will be one long, predictable process that's safe and secure and storm-free, but I cannot. Here's what I can promise you, because Jesus said so. He said, I will never leave you and I will never forsake you. He will comfort you and He will carry you through every dark chapter. I can tell you that you are part of a church family that will love you, that will surround you, that will support you through every situation that you're going through. We will laugh together. We will rejoice together. And sometimes we will weep together, but we will go through it together. And I can promise you that even though there will be some storms, there's going to be plenty of joy in the journey as well. I'd ask you to stand. Psalms 40:4 says, happy are those that trust in the Lord. It doesn't say happy are those that have certainty. It says happy are those that have trust. If you want happiness, you need to trust Him. The peace that somebody needs today is going to come from the decision to stop searching for certainty and instead choose to trust. One night, a house caught on fire, and a young boy was forced to run to the roof. And the father stood on the ground below in his outstretched arm, and he was calling, son, jump, and I'll catch you. He knew the boy couldn't save his own life, but all the boy could see, however, was flames and smoke and darkness. As you can imagine, he was afraid to leave the roof, and the father kept yelling, jump, I'll catch you. The boy cried out, Daddy, I can't see you. The father replied, but I can see you, and that's all that matters. Somebody here today is saying, God, I can't trust you. I can't see you in my trial. God, this is, all I see is flames around me. All I see is smoke. All I see is mayhem. All I see is my problems. I can't see you. I want to. I really want to. And He says, it's okay, child. I can see you. And that's all that matters. If we can learn to trust Him. If we can learn to say, God, I'm not going to go down burning in this ship. I'm going to jump. I'm going to make sure and let you know that I trust you with my life more than I trust certainty. I'd ask you to close your eyes across the room. For someone here, your search for certainty has left you feeling fearful. Security on your job, security on your marriage, security with your children. Somebody here is saying, God, I've been feeling fearful for my lack of control. Would you raise your hand if you say that's me? Say, God, I've been feeling concerned. I've been trying to control my environment and it's stressing me out. Somebody's saying the uncertainty of my health, it's been stressing me out, God, and it's too heavy to carry. Would you raise your hand if you said my health, my finances, they're difficult, God, because I'm trying to control them myself. I'm trying to manage it on my own, but it's getting too much to carry.